Ron Thacker was born on January 16th, 1938. He passed away December 30th, 2003. He was from Richmond, California. And he starts the game with e4. Bobby with a Sicilian defense. Knight f3, d6. And here we have a delayed Alpines variation. Knight f6, bishop d3, pawn g6, bishop c2, bishop g7. Thacker, leaving the opening book, played d4 here. The book move is castles, which is answered by castles. h3, precluding any infiltration on g4. Knight c6, pawn d4. Now, that pawn is captured and then recaptured. And then e5 strikes at the center. That is the book line. Thacker playing d4 straight away here on move 6. Bobby castles. h3. Pawn takes pawn, pawn takes pawn. Knight c6. Knight c3. Now, if he'd played e5... No, e5 doesn't work here, does it? I guess if he plays castles, though, he could play castle and actually transpose to what I just showed. Knight c3 is what he played. And then e5. No, it's still not possible. Well, it doesn't matter because Bobby played e5. And d5 hitting the knight. Knight d4. Well, this actually is already equal for black, and especially so after knight takes knight. Bishop e3 is the more common move to keep the equal sign on the board. Knight takes knight was played. Pawn takes the knight, knight to e2. And that brings us to a position that is unique to this game, at least at the master level database. You may wonder about queen takes the pawn, but that is incredibly weak. You do not want to move in line with this bishop, for then knight takes pawn can be played with a double exclam, thank you very much. It's a discovered attack. You'd have to play queen over to b4. You cannot take because that would allow rook e8, winning the queen for the rook. So you'd have to slide over somewhere, and then after knight takes the knight and pawn takes the knight, perhaps a check can be given here. It does not like my check. Bishop e3, queen c7, and so on. You can see the eval bar favors black in any case. Even so, it didn't like the rook e8. The eval bar doesn't mind it. The annotator does. So anyway, knight e2. Don't grab that pawn. That's a big, big mistake. Rook e8 by Bobby Fischer. f3. And again, of course not queen takes. Let's just mark that it doesn't make any difference if you play it here or there. Knight takes e4 is still a winning move. So f3, queen b6, bishop d3, knight d7 here, queen a4. A little dubious, to say the least. Rook back to f8, quite interesting. Oh, I see. He wants to get out of the line of fire so that he can play knight c5 and hit the queen. Thacker finally castles. Now knight c5. Queen back to d1. Maybe queen a3 could be played here. It got a star, but what's it think about? Only a check mark for queen a3. Actually thought that would be better, but not according to the annotator. Bishop d7. Now king h1. Knight f4 might be the better way to keep the fight going. King h1 and f5 striking at the center. Knight g3. Knight f4 again, yeah, is the thematic idea to help keep this game alive. Knight takes the bishop on d3. Queen takes the knight. Now bishop b5. And you've got a skewer here. That's going to win material. and the eval bar strongly favoring black. Queen d1, bishop takes rook, queen takes the bishop, and pawn f4 chases that knight to e2. g5 defends the pawn, and now queen d1. Super attacking this pawn, but to no real avail. It's twice defended, isn't it? Queen's rook to c8. Rooks belong on open files. Rook b1. Now queen a6. Queen b3. Bishop d2 seems to be much more hopeful, but look at the eval bar lunge in black's favor here. Yeah, he left this hanging, didn't he? Yeah, you definitely don't want to leave your peaches hanging. Bishop d2 does get a star here. Queen b3, and I can take that knight with impunity, and Bobby does just that. This game is over. It's just a matter of time and technique. Bishop takes f4. Some crazy, desperate attempt at some kind of counterplay. That's going to fail. Pawn takes the bishop. Queen takes the b-man. Pawn d3, and the eval bar is pegged. You can see M10 at the bottom of the eval bar, indicating that the eval bar has found checkmate in 10 moves at most. The players didn't have the benefit of such an indicator, so they played on. Queen takes the pawn. Pawn d2. Queen takes the bishop. What's he even doing? I'm not really sure I understand. King takes the queen. And rook e1. I don't understand why, if he's going to do this, why not just resign? Pawn takes the rook with promotion to a queen and check. He played h2, but finally just threw in the towel. Checkmate is unavoidable after queen g3 check, and then either queen takes the g-man is mate. Take your pick. Doesn't matter where you go. Either queen is checkmate. In fact, this is checkmate, this is checkmate, this is checkmate, this is checkmate, and that's checkmate. Oh, and rook up here is checkmate. Almost missed the rook. So take your pick of checkmates.